I still have a photo from my school days. I'm there with my friend Andrew. This guy was tall and thin, and his hairstyle seemed firm because he was overzealous with nail polish. That's how I remember Andrew. We've been sitting at the same desk since 8th grade. Not to say that it was always a close friendship, but sometimes we spent time together. One day, Andrew suggested a walk in the forest park. I recently remembered going there with my mom to watch squirrels when I was a kid, he said at the time. I wonder what this forest park looks like now. There were benches, a bridge over a stream, and gravel paths. Let's go have a picnic. I didn't understand which forest park they were talking about, and I didn't even know there was such a place in our city. I was curious, and we went. Andrew remembered exactly how to get there from our part of the city. We had to cross the railway, then follow a wide path. And now we were in the shade of tall fir trees. The forest park was not like what he described. Only the concrete supports remained of the benches. Grass broke through the rubble on the paths. The log bridge was still standing, but the stream had long since dried up and was overgrown with ferns. This place looked forgotten by people, and it seemed like even squirrels hadn't been there for a long time. It immediately occurred to me that it was suspiciously quiet there. I would like to hear the voice of a cuckoo or the knocks of a woodpecker, but there are only creaks of dry trunks around. Yes, it's an unfriendly picture, Andrew said. That's not how I remember this place at all, but no one will reprimand us for making a bonfire. It's going to be a great hike. We walked deep into the forest park in search of a suitable clearing. My friend was a funny and chatty guy. He couldn't shut his mouth the whole way. But it's a mushroom place, he said, pointing at his feet. Look, there are the pigs. They are also called tweezers. They seem to be poisonous, but my grandfather fried them with potatoes. He didn't seem to care. Andrew, a bold yellowish mushroom, pointed with his foot at a thick tree where brownish mushroom half-caps stuck out. Oh, and these are tinder boxes. They seem to be okay to eat, but you need to soak them for a long time. Look, someone has already picked them up. Maybe the animals are eating them. Are there any animals here? I asked warily. The friend shrugged his shoulders. I don't know. Maybe moose. Look, the trunk looks like a man, as if he had grown into a tree. Well, look, clean off my ass. Andrew kicked the bizarre rounded outgrowths covered with moss with his knee. I smiled out of politeness, but I thought what a child he was. We moved on. Andrew walked ahead, looking around, but suddenly, something crunched under his foot, and he fell. A brown smoke cloud rose into the air from the ground. Andrew, are you hurt? I cried. The guy coughed from the smoke, jumped to his feet, dusted himself off, and said, Call Yun. What's going to happen to me? By the way, this smoke is spores from mushrooms. Damn tobacco. Have you ever heard of such things? I'll show you now. Andrew stared at his feet, but there were no mushrooms there. I also looked down and saw that the source of the smoke was a small hole. A cluster of spores erupted from it in a thick stream. It was very small and shaped like a mouth. For a moment it seemed to me that someone's dry lips were sticking out of the ground, sprinkled with leaves and coniferous needles. It looked strange, but I didn't focus on it because I was distracted by Andrew. He had a long cut on his arm just below the elbow. A drop of blood was crawling. Damn it, I said. It needs to be processed. You brought peroxide with you. A bandage. The guy was still coughing. There were these spores everywhere. They even covered the edges of the wound on his arm. It worried me. Oh, come on. It's just a scratch, said Andrew. Nothing will happen. There is no infection in the forest. He blew on the wound and wiped the blood off with the sleeve of his t-shirt, leaving a dirty brown mark on it. I thought he wasn't a kid. He'd figure it out on his own, but the mood was already spoiled. The misophobia has played out. We gathered some dry branches, built a fire, and sat on the log. The flame crackled pleasantly. Everything would be fine, but there was no comfort. This forest was too quiet, as if inanimate. Andrew found suitable twigs on which we toasted bread and sausages. They say everything tastes better outdoors, but I ate without appetite. I wanted to wait until the evening to get home as soon as possible. I didn't like this mysterious forest. Finally, the first rays of sunset began to shine. We finished the last tea from the thermos and went back. When we went out to the railway tracks, I noticed that Andrew's scratch had swollen into a red lump, and he kept scratching it without noticing it. You should take this to a doctor, I advised. I don't like going to the hospital, the friend replied. I'll put iodine on it at home, wrap it up, and everything will go away. These words did not inspire confidence, although I knew it would be impossible to convince Andrew to visit a doctor. At school, he always avoided going to the infirmary if he got an injury. He turned pale and almost fainted when we were vaccinated against the flu. We went to our street and said goodbye. Our houses were not far away, literally a couple of blocks from each other. Despite my fatigue, I couldn't help but worry about Andrew. What is that strange lump on his arm? I wanted to make sure everything was okay, so the next day, I went to see him. Andrew opened the door, beaming with joy. "Come on in, Kolyan, do you want some dumplings?" he said, inviting me into the apartment. His arm was wrapped in a bandage below the elbow, and a lump was clearly visible under it. "What have you got there?" I asked anxiously. "It's fine, but it itches a little. It'll go away soon," he replied, as if nothing had happened. "Well, everything is swollen there. Let's take a look," I asked, involuntarily stretching my hands to the bandage. Andrew nodded, and we went into the kitchen. I helped him untie the bandage, and when I saw what was under it, I jumped aside, as if scalded. There was a small mushroom on the wound site that looked like a tinderbox hat. It was reddish-brown in color, and there were thin, curved roots around the skin. Did a mushroom grow on me? Andrew jumped up in fright. He tried to pull it off, but immediately pulled his hand away with a cry. "Oh, it hurts. Go to the doctor," I shouted. I'm going. "Get off me." He waved it away, clutching his hand. "Don't yell like that. Do you want your sister to come running?" His older sister Valeria didn't like Yang very much, and I thought she was an arrogant girl. Still, I wanted to talk to her. Andrew was too frivolous about what was happening to him. For this initiative, the guy hastily escorted me out. He said he'd figure it out on his own. It's been a few days since I saw my friend. I tried to call him, but his sister always answered the phone. "What's Andrew doing there?" I asked. "How do I know what he's doing there?" she replied irritably. "He's dying in his room." "Andrew, your friend is calling here. He doesn't want to come. You should come and check it out yourself." And Valeria dropped the call. I gripped the phone tightly. I was scared. This frivolous phrase about Andrew going out in his room was panic-inducing. It sounded like a hint that something was wrong. I knew I couldn't wait any longer, so I went to him. I found myself on his doorstep again. My heart was pounding in my chest. Andrew's sister opened the door with an indifferent look. She didn't say hello, but simply disappeared into the depths of the apartment. I went into a friend's room. The air there was musty and humid, like in a basement. He was covered with a thick blanket. His face was pale, and beads of sweat glistened on his forehead. "Andrew, wake up," I said. "What's the matter with you?" Are you feeling unwell? Huh? He opened his eyes and stared at me with a dull gaze. When he got up, I put my hand over my mouth when I saw what had happened to him. His right arm was covered from shoulder to elbow with tinder, like the growths of some unearthly disease. Small brown mushrooms and large black ones with a pimply surface spread over the skin. The earthy smell of rotting wood filled the room. "What is it?" I cried out. "You're sick! Let's urgently call an ambulance." Andrew waved his hands. "Quiet, quiet. No need to panic. I know what to do about it. I'll go to the forest park right now, and nothing will happen." To the forest park? I thought he was crazy. Yes, I need to go there. Andrew got up from the bed. His movements were fast and clumsy. "We'll fix everything now." He pulled on pants, a t-shirt, and a windbreaker to hide this horror from prying eyes. I could barely stand on my feet. The guy was overgrown with mushrooms, but he wasn't going to treat his ailment. Andre, I tried to stop him, but he asked me to take my hands off him. It's because he got spores in his wound, I thought. But is it really possible for tinder plants to grow on a person? Andrew went out into the hallway and pulled on his shoes. The fingers of his right hand were trembling, as if he was making an effort to make them obey. "You'd better not come with me, or you'll get scared," he warned. I couldn't leave him, and I followed him down the hallway, then down the street, repeating, "Go to the hospital." "You need to go to the hospital. Leave me alone. I know what I'm doing," the friend replied with irritation, and wiped the sweat from his face. It was a hot day, and he was walking in a thick windbreaker, like an old man. We were back behind the railroad crossing. "And why would you go there? You'll see now, since you've already tried," Andre replied angrily. He walked straight without slowing his pace. We were back in the shadow of an abandoned forest park. The air was humid, saturated with the smells of decayed foliage and mushrooms. There are mushrooms everywhere. Why didn't I notice the stank right away? Andrew walked ahead, looking around as if he was looking for something, and then he stopped in a wide clearing, cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, "Who are you calling?" I asked. "You'd better stand further away. He's a little blind and he'll see you from afar," Andre said. Suddenly, the bushes rustled, as if someone was making their way through the thicket, pushing the branches apart. And it wasn't a man or a beast that emerged from there, but something in between. He had a man's body covered with thick, curly hair, and his head was that of a boar. A shaggy pig's snout with long yellow fangs, drooping ears covered with stiff bristles. The black eyes were too small for such a huge head. Moisture glistened on the dark pig's nickle. His nostrils flared, noisily sucking in air. His legs were bestial with wide hooves, and his hands resembled human ones, only with 3 fingers instead of 5. Stepping back, I grabbed Andrew by the sleeve, trying to pull him along, but he did not move, stood as if hypnotized, and the creature slowly approached him, stamping its hooves. Then, stifling a scream, I ran away and hid behind the trunk of a thick oak tree. It all just seemed unreal. The delirium of a sick mind was happening before my eyes. I watched, my nails digging into the bark. The boar man was slowly approaching Andrew. My friend didn't look so tall against his background. He unbuttoned and took off his windbreaker. Then he got rid of his t-shirt and turned his shoulder to the monster, offering his arm covered with mushrooms. The boar's snout bent lower. The yellow slobbery fangs twitched. The nickel wrinkled up. I dug my fingers even harder into the oak bark. The boar's snout was carefully eating the mushrooms from Andre's hand. She chewed and slurped. The sight was simply disgusting. My breath caught in my throat, and I turned away. pressing myself against the trunk. The friend did not scream or resist. And finally, it was over. The shaggy-haired man with the boar's head had his fill. I peeked out from behind a tree and saw him walking away into the thicket, waving a tufted short tail. Andre stood in the clearing, rubbing his cleansed hand. There were red marks in place of the mushrooms, without the top layer of skin. I ran up to him, trembling with fear. "Don't make any noise, okay?" he said. His voice was calm. Picking mushrooms hurts, but when he does, it doesn't hurt. "What the fuck was that?" I asked. "I don't know," he replied. "It's going to be okay. I'm going to the hospital now, I swear. Otherwise, by tomorrow I'll be covered in mushrooms again." Andre picked up his t-shirt from the grass, then put on a windbreaker, and we walked back to the edge of the forest. The guy suddenly coughed. A brown cloud of spores came out of his mouth. It looked really bad. "Do you have any open wounds?" he asked, calming his cough. "Don't come with me. I'm going to the hospital, and you're going home, okay?" "I'll be cured." I walked the distance from him, walked him to the hospital gate, and ran home. I seemed to smell like mushrooms. I wanted to get rid of that smell as soon as possible. I stood in the shower for a long time, unable to move. Images came to mind. The shaggy boar man, his pig snout. Who is this? Hybrid? I've never seen anything so terrible in my life. The day flew by unnoticed. In the evening, after recovering from the shock, I called the hospital. I wanted to know how Andre was and what was wrong with him, if he was alive. "Sorry, we don't have such a patient," the voice on the phone replied, and I felt the floor give way under my feet. "Maybe he's at home?" His older sister answered the phone. "He's not here. I thought he was with you," she said. "And what happened?" No matter how much I wanted to distance myself from this nightmare, I couldn't get it out of my head. The night passed in a troubled dream. When I woke up in the morning, I immediately ran to the phone and dialed my friend's number. "He didn't come," Valeria replied, and there was no longer indifference in her voice, only concern. "What's going on with him?" I didn't go into details, just said that we were in the woods, and he left alone. I knew she wouldn't believe the truth. I had breakfast without chewing much. I washed down the sandwiches with tea, quickly packed up, and went to the forest park. If Andre is nowhere to be found, then he is there. I had to find him before something irreparable happened. It was a clear day. The sun's rays penetrated through the foliage of the forest park, glittering on the path with colorful patterns. But nothing could brighten up the evil atmosphere of this place. As I walked, peering into the dense greenery, I felt like a small, frightened animal. I didn't even want to think that I could meet a man with a boar's snout again. If only I could find a friend. If only I could see him alive. I cried out. My voice broke the silence of the forest. In response, there was only the rustling of leaves and the cracking of trees. And then, from somewhere nearby, there was a guttural roar. I immediately regretted coming there alone. An animal smell filled my nose. Branches were breaking very close. There was a quick clop of hooves. A terrifying beast was rushing through the forest, sweeping away everything in its path. I had a choice but to stand still, hoping that the blind monster wouldn't notice me, or run without looking back. I chose the latter. I rushed from there, not feeling my legs, not feeling the ground. He flew along the path, driven by a menacing shout behind him. The trees around them merged into one green mass. The beast lost me in the thicket, and I didn't even notice how I ended up at the railway tracks. And who will you tell about this? Who will believe? But you can't send someone to the forest for Andre without telling them what's going on there. A boar's snout is hardly a friendly animal. He was rushing at my cry, as if he wanted to kill me, tear me apart with his fangs and trample me with his hooves. I had to come home with nothing. I didn't know how to save my friend. I couldn't think of anything useful. It took too much time to doubt and think. Another day and one night passed. The next morning, I was asked to answer the phone. I ran, hoping it was Andre. He wanted to hear the words that he was on the mend, but it was his sister. "Hello. Hi, this is Leora. Do you know where Andre is? He doesn't show up at home, although I think he came at night. In the kitchen, everything is upside down. My parents are living in the country now, and I'm alone. I'm kind of scared." The girl's voice was trembling with tension. "Wait, I'll be right there," I replied, and went to pack with firm intentions. Tell her everything. She and her family had to find out the truth. Valeria opened the door, almost rejoicing. She didn't look as haughty as usual. There was fear in her face, and her lips were trembling. There was a sour smell in the hallway, and dirty footprints were smeared on the floor. "Did you see that?" she asked, lowering her eyes. I looked around. An overturned trash can lay on the kitchen floor, and the doors under the sink remained open. "He seemed to be looking for something," she whispered. I looked under the sink. "Is anything missing?" Leora squatted down, and we stared into the void. "Poison!" she screamed. There was a can of mole poison here. My father bought it recently for a summer cottage. It's a very strong poison. "Let's go to the forest," I said, without hesitation. "Andre needs help. Hurry up!" The girl nodded, without asking for an explanation. She realized that she needed to act without delay. I decided to forget about the fear until we find Andre. Realizing that he had been afraid for too long and uselessly, it was impossible to let this matter go by itself. We were silent most of the way. I didn't want to say anything so that the girl wouldn't change her mind about going. It wasn't so scary with her. I brought Leora to the forest park, to the place where I saw her brother the last time. "What is this place? What is it?" she asked, looking around. "It seems like I was here a long time ago. Is Andre here somewhere?" "Don't make any noise," I whispered, touching her arm. "Let's go quietly." Valeria went forward into the depths of the thicket, as if wanting to explore everything as soon as possible. Suddenly, her piercing scream echoed through the forest. I ran over and saw her staring at the ground with her eyes wide open. Her chest froze. A woman was lying on the ground. Her body was completely covered with pine needles and leaves. There were long, deep gashes on the body, as if from animal fangs. Tinder bushes grew thickly from these wounds. She didn't smell like decay, just mushrooms. Everything seemed to freeze inside me. "Why?" "What is it?" Leora asked, stammering. She fiddled with the end of her braid, batted her long eyelashes. I was terrified myself, but I tried to calm the girl down. Quietly. "There's a scary beast walking around here. Wild boar. Neo, though. There's a scary beast walking around here. Wild boar. Not really, though. It's his doing. Bah. He's a little blind. Wild boars can't see very well. If we stay away from him, he won't notice us. We need to find Andre and get him out of here." "No." Valeria shook her head. "You do it yourself. I'm getting out of here." I tried to bring her to her conscience. "Leora, this is your brother." But she was panicking. "There's nothing I can do. I'll tell my dad to figure it out." And she ran away like a frightened deer. And once again, I was left alone in this forest. But I knew that I had to move on. I couldn't leave my friend here again. I walked without looking around. Every creak of wood and rustle of grasses seemed like a threat. At any second, a man with a boar's head could jump out of the thicket. It was scary to think that he would cut me with his fangs, and I, like the others, would become his mistress. And suddenly he caught my eye. The hefty figure of a man-beast was lying in a clearing, in the dense shadow of an oak tree. I jerked in fright, but then I realized that something was wrong with him. He didn't move or even breathe. His eyes dimmed, and a blue tongue protruded from his mouth. He's dead. It's lucky he's dead. I looked away from Cabani Varillo and saw Andre a little further away. He froze on his knees and looked like a tree stump covered with moss and mushrooms. His arms, chest, neck, and face were overgrown with endless black tinder, and a can of mole venom lay at his feet. Only a handful of pink granules remained at the bottom. I rushed to him and screamed, but my friend didn't move or react. There was no life left in his eyes. The body resembled a rotting tree, and pink granules hung around the mouth and on the chin, remnants of poison. At that moment, I realized that Andre was dead. He ate the poison to poison his mushrooms. He knew he was going to die, but he wanted to take the monster that used him as a food source with him. It's a pity that he never found out that he succeeded. The shaggy pig had gorged himself on mushrooms, and now his disgusting dead carcass was lying under an oak tree. Tears welled up in my eyes. It became a pity that I was not with my friend until the last minute. He died alone and in fear, without saying goodbye to anyone. I wanted to touch his shoulder one last time, but I couldn't. The bodies affected by the fungi were contagious. I got up, leaving the wild boar and my friend in the clearing, and left without looking back. And he never returned to that forest again. How much time has passed? In those years, many people disappeared in our city, and Andre is still considered missing. But I know the truth, and I can still hear his sad whisper in every rustle of the leaves.